What has been the most difficult decision that you've had to make, and how did you come to that choice?
The most difficult decision I've had to make was when I was diagnosed with cancer. They didn't realize it was cancer when they took out my appendix. So they didn't take any margins. So I was given the option to take out the right side of my colon, but it was an option because if there was cancer cells floating around in there, then they would want that removed. But if there wasn't, then it was just kind of like a safety protocol. And then I would just have to move on with life and figure out life after that. So I decided to continue with the surgery because at the time I was 35. I had a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old at the time. And it was pretty hard because not only did it affect me, it affected them. And we had just seen my mother go through stage 4 breast cancer when it metastasized to her brain. And it was pretty tricky. But, everything turned out fine. I'm healthy and 5 years in remission.
Amazing.
So, yeah, it was hard. I hate to always have to dwell on that as like something in my life, but it's a fact. And that's part of what's propelled my art career as well.
Mm-hmm. What was the biggest thing that you learned from that experience?
The biggest thing I learned was that life is short and to hug your family a little tighter and really embrace the people around you, not just your family, but your friends, as well as the opportunities. And also make sure that you are living for yourself, not doing things just to pacify others.
Mm-hmm. So today you're a full-time artist, an abstract expressionist, as you title yourself, and a curator. When did that transition start? When did you start your career as an artist? Was it pre the diagnosis? Was it after the diagnosis?
It was right after when I said I'm going to take this on full force and get a studio and see what happens. Because that did open my eyes to make sure that I'm living a fulfilled life, to make sure that I'm doing what serves me and not always serving others.
Mm-hmm. And what took you into the lane of art? Did you see it as a form of self-healing through that difficult journey that you were going through? Was it somebody that inspired you to try it? How did you kind of go into that path?
It was exactly that, the healing aspect. When my mom was diagnosed, that was right before me, I realized that I was very depressed, and I always said that I always felt that my hands were empty and I wasn't doing anything. I remember sitting on the couch and just watching a lot of TV and spiraling. And it wasn't a good headspace to be. And as a kid, I always wanted to be an artist. So I decided to go down that path, and my first medium was actually epoxy resin. So I built a little marijuana grow house in my garage, literally 4 foot by 4 foot, and later found out that I'm allergic to it. So I moved to oils in my basement, which is a little bit more temperature controlled for that. Found out there's still stuff in there I'm allergic to. And I was very reluctant to going to acrylic. But, if I wanted to create and follow this path of healing through the arts, that's where I was being led to. I wasn't being led to collage or anything like that. So I went in, embraced the path that I was most resistant to, and found that I could heal myself, my wounds of my mom's cancer, and then later on my own cancer through painting.
Mm-hmm. And you have a very interesting approach to your art, because when I visited your studio, I could tell one of the biggest things that I took away from your art, it's very emotion driven. You have a very bold approach, because I think most people, their approach to art is very technical. It's very industry expected. And I think your approach to art is very fearless. I think that you try a lot of different styles and techniques, and you're very innovative with your artistic journey. How did you start that path of almost kind of fearless creating and taking bold approach to your artistic style? Because I think that in the world of art, there's a lot of set expectations when it comes to what people want to see from artists and creators. But I think when you create with a story and with emotion, you bring something into the world that I think a lot of times people didn't even realize that they needed to see or interact with or experience. So tell me a little bit about, because you use vacuums, you use a bunch of different types of textures and styles, and you talk a lot about the layers of your art. Is that part of your way of communicating your story through those layers?
Absolutely. I started using random items in my work back in the garage days where I didn't have all the money to purchase the paintbrushes that were just going to get thrown away. A good example of that is that my youngest son would go out and not buy, but pull twigs off the trees. He was a Boy Scout. And then together we would fabricate scrapers and whatnot. And then that's kind of where it all stemmed from, was taking things from around my life to help tell my story. One of the things that I usually do with my work is create an underpainting. It's usually something that no one's ever really going to see. Parts of it might pop out here and there, but it won't be what it originally was. It could be words or even holes, scrapes from a knife, using the random things.
But do you have like a set vision in mind when you start a piece, or is it kind of like you paint your feelings, like you paint and you discover as you go?
Correct. I do not have a set goal in mind. I might have set goal colors, but never really a set goal composition.
Mm-hmm. And how does it differentiate from your curation approach? Because you've worked with organizations such as the Cranes Communication, Amazon offices, and what have you noticed to be the biggest kind of aha or difference or change or surprise for you when it comes to working with like more of a corporate type project compared to commission or just personal work that you need to get out onto canvas?
Personal work, I can do anything I want. When you compare it to something that's more corporate, they may have a little bit more to say about it. I had one client who commissioned me to do 12 pieces, but she didn't want the robot vacuum involved. She felt
Really?
it didn't embody what their business was about. Instead,
I'm curious, what was that conversation like? Like, did she know that you use vacuums in your work through following you on social? And then she had very clearly stated, we do not want a vacuum involved.
No, actually the vacuums were emerging as I was getting her commission involved. So it was like, oh, hey, by the way, this is something I'm incorporating. Are you okay if I do this? She didn't really have a visual to see what that could look like because it was still something I was developing at the time.
What was the reluctancy on that? What was the response when she said no? Was it
fine? Yeah.
Okay.
I try to always understand that, there's a reason why, and that's totally okay. There's going to be a million more art pieces for me to do with them.
When you work on a commission piece, do you open up the opportunity for your clients to inject their creative opinion on your process? Or is it you kind of just say, hey, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to try. What do you think about it? Because I think for me, when I'm creating, I like to have the conversation with a client before the process starts. And I'm sure that this is your approach as well. But I'm curious, from one creator to another, how much do you allow someone to inject themselves into your process? Because I kind of picture it as, if I'm a fine artist, I would feel kind of, in a way, not offended, but just kind of like surprised if I'm working on a piece and then someone comes and says, hold on, do it like this, because then it almost starts to feel like it's not my original piece anymore. What are your thoughts on that?
I have mixed thoughts, and I've been in multiple different situations. And for me, what it really comes down to is I'm okay with them having their opinion, their input, and I'm okay with them saying, I want something to be infused into the artwork. I've also had clients on the other side where I've had no conversations with them, but they've shown me a picture of what they expect.
Mm.
On the other side, I've had clients, a specific client, who showed me a picture of what she wanted, a computer rendering. She was incredibly critical of my work, and that was the type of client that I was not okay with, because she asked me for a progress photo that I don't normally give.
What is that? A progress photo?
Like a photo of where I was at with the
Got
piece.
it. Okay.
And so I gave it to her, and I knew inside that like I should have said no, but I did it anyway because I was
At what
early in
point
my
did you
career.
send it to her? Like midpoint or?
It was about midpoint. Yeah, I had all of her colors in the formations, and she had seen it, and she said, "No, this is terrible. I'm gonna find another artist to complete this for you,
Wow.
and I'm not gonna pay you." And so I took a step back and I said, "Okay, well, we're not doing that. I will prorate it or we'll figure it out, but you're not having someone go over my work. It's not even done." Art in my process changes so much from the beginning to the end. So that's why that's not okay, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But as far as like how much they put into my work, as far as how much they get to say of what the artwork looks like at the end, I always try to take that in and give them what they want. And I think that I've done a good job. I don't know. I'm still here.
So for a lot of artists, and I think any service provider, whether you're an artist, whether you're a barber, whether you're a landscaper, the approach to soliciting work or soliciting, potential clients is a very tricky thing, because it really matters who you're talking to and the strategic approach that you take when soliciting new work. I think that, for me as a marketing media guy, I have to really understand the client before I even feel like I can propose a solution for them, So when you're soliciting new clients or when you're approached by a potential client as for a new commission piece, what is that conversation typically like for you?
I try to keep it chill, like as a reflection of who I am, as well as a reflection of my art. I like to try to just do something like get coffee and talk about what their expectations are. If they saw something online that they're comparing my work to. Usually all the clients that come to me are people who have found me online or word of mouth. So it's kind of like they've already seen my work. They've seen what I could do. I've also had clients come and see me in a gallery, and I've shown them, this is everything. This is texture, non-texture, color, non-color. So where do you want to go from here?
So do they come with the approach, we're trying to design this room and there's going to be a lot of blues or there's going to be a lot of greens? How, like, what is their approach to you? Like, what is the most common approach from commission work that you hear?
Oh man, it's really mixed for me. And I know that you're asking for a common approach, but a common comment I hear is, I got to buy a new couch, or I had to paint my walls. I have to wait a minute, something like that. That's so common. And it's also so cliche.
So what does your typical clientele look like? Are they interior designers, corporate offices?
Both. I'd say it's a good 50-50 mix right now.
Really?
Yeah. If they were on a race, they'd be head to head.
And which do you prefer?
I like them both for different reasons. You get a different moment to create differently for each. Corporate clients are more reserved usually. Household clients, and people who are going to put in their home, they're a little bit more outgoing, I'd say.
What advice would you share with another artist that is looking to develop more relationships with that type of clientele, like interior designers, developers, people that are trying to curate a room and using artwork to be a huge staple inside of that design?
So my biggest advice to anyone who's trying to get involved with interior designers or even the corporate field is to be open-minded. If you're rigid with your work, it's not going to help you. You're going to want to be able to take in their feedback or their requests. It's very important because, like they may comment about their couch or whatever. And as annoying as that is, you can't push them to do something, And you also have to practice patience, and that kind of stinks too. But, what's meant for you will come for you. And maybe something needs to sit a couple months. That's totally okay. So
Are a lot of your interior design clients like repeat clients, or do you find them starting to become like huge advocates for your work, and then you start to get a lot more referrals through those relationships?
I haven't worked with a lot of interior designers. I've worked with a couple clients that had an interior designer. And when that came up, I didn't work with the designer one-on-one.
Got it.
So I can't really answer
So you
that
worked
question.
with the client, and then the client communicated to the designer.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
And maybe that was a special circumstance. I don't know. But I've had other clients who had interior designers and the client was in charge of the art, which seems backwards, but I don't know. I'm just over here doing pretty stuff.
It is an interesting topic because I think that art has been making its way into a lot of homes recently. And I think that for any artist, obviously when they're really working to develop strong relationships with collectors and new client types, the question always presents itself: who is my client? How do I find them? And what do I say to them in order to get them to want to buy a piece of art from me?
Mm-hmm.
Like what are those responses in your mind when you think about that kind of concept? Do you have an idea profile, customer or client profile in your mind of who your target clientele is?
My target clientele is definitely like the middle-aged person, not male or female. Female typically, but there's a lot of men out there who appreciate art. Typically homeowners, and I get a lot of people from Oakland County. I've gotten quite a few from Detroit. Not many from like my area, which I'm surprised because, they're decent size houses.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's really, really what I've noticed.
And do they approach you with the, hey, I found you online. We're looking to redesign our living room and we love your work and we would love to chat with you about what it would look like to have you create a custom piece for us? Or is it, we saw one of your pieces, we love it, we want to know how we can make this happen as soon as possible?
Both. It
Really?
depends. Yeah. I had one woman call me, I don't know, 3 weeks ago. She was just kind of like plugging away looking for an artist to make something super specific. It was like an L-shaped canvas with other like canvases around it to create like a collage of canvases.
And what was it for?
It was for her hallway.
Wow.
Yeah. So we talked about it and I found someone who could create that L-shaped canvas, quoted it, sent it back to her. And she's like, all right, awesome. I want to move forward, but my cabinets are coming in. My blah, blah, blah is, happening. Mm-hmm. And with that, she said, October, November, totally fine. Like I said before, what's meant for you comes for you.
Mm-hmm. And how did she find you?
I don't know. She says she found my website.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I think that is an important thing for a lot of artists to hear, is that because you are very active online, like you are very active on social media, you are always engaged with events happening in the city, exhibitions, curating exhibitions. So you're very embedded into the community. So when you're very involved, it's easy for people, or it's easier for people to find you because they may have heard of you, they may have seen you at an event, they may have attended one of the exhibitions that you curated. And then, because we do this all the time, like we'll save like a page to our Chrome browser tabs, or we'll screenshot something that we want to go back to late. Some of us text links to ourselves because it's something we want to get back to eventually, or we want to, potentially buy in the future. It's kind of like that whole seven touch point rules in marketing. Like you have to be seen 7 times before somebody even starts to formulate the idea, I want to work with this person or I want to buy this product.
Right.
So what is your approach on staying top of mind for your target market, but also like your audience? Because like I mentioned, you are very involved in social media, but what other marketing strategies do you practice to get your work sold?
To be honest with you, the entire reason why I started curating was part of my marketing strategy. Because when you put out an ad that says solo show of so-and-so curated by name.
And explain for anybody watching that doesn't know what curating means in terms of like the art world. How would you define that?
Curating is the act of putting on an art show or grouping artists together to put on an art show. And it may not always be an art show. It could be an art rotation or just getting people involved for the same sake of whatever it is, like an art exhibition based around food-based items, It could be very creative in how you curate.
Mm-hmm. So you started using that as your marketing strategy. When did you start? When was your first curated show?
It was 2021, and it was a show with 75 artists who all did a self-portrait, 12 by 12 self-portrait.
Wow.
And the artists were from all over the state of Michigan. And the show traveled to 10 different locations for 2 years.
And where was the first location?
It was in a boutique in Dearborn. Yeah. So, and then we ended up ending the show at Anton Art Center.
Wait a minute. So you traveled to 10 different locations with the show, all of the same artists?
Yeah.
How, like, I've never heard that before, because I've seen shows that will be up for a month at a gallery or at a venue, like a pop-up. But how did you approach the almost like exhibition on tour?
I made a PDF and just sent it out to all these galleries and networked. And I got a really good response from it. People wanted to sign up. And it just kind of just formed its own little pathway. Yeah.
And when you say signed up, they basically were agreeing to have your show on display. And what was the period of time that the shows were on display at each location?
It varies because not every gallery has the same rotation schedule. So no less than 3 weeks. And I've also had one it was there for 2 months.
2 months, wow.
Yeah.
And what was the results from that tour? What came from it?
A lot of networking, a lot of community building, relationship building on my end. I was able to really learn who the Detroit artists are, as well as artists as far to like Muskegon, I believe, was the furthest away. As well as just really putting my feet in the sand of the galleries that are around here so they knew who I was and knew my name. And then when I went to them with my own personal art, they already knew like, hey, Amanda Koss did this. So it's kind of just building that repertoire.
Did you present yourself as an artist or solely as a curator when you were soliciting these partnerships?
Both. Yeah.
So, because it's interesting because I've been in the art space, in the art community for almost 4 years now. And a lot of times when I'm like, hey, do you know who Amanda Koss? They're like, yeah, of course I know who Amanda Koss. So it's cool because one of the things that I think a lot of people outside of the art community does not realize is that the art community is very tight-knit. Like a lot of artists and curators know of each other. They may have never interacted or had a conversation, but they know of each other. So I think that for anybody that is looking to expand their network, I think embedding yourself in an authentic way into the art community is such a smart idea, because art creativity is a part of every industry, and artists are human beings that consume products that, have followings of their own. So I think the approach of networking within the art space is such a smart strategy, because you never know who you're going to meet.
Yeah.
You can literally have the CEO of General Motors attending an opening reception because they're looking to purchase a piece of artwork from a specific artist, and you're there rubbing elbows. There's nowhere else that you can freely do that, because if you're going into a room with the CEO of a major organization, more than likely those type of events you have to be invited to, whereas an opening reception, they happen every month.
Yeah.
So where are you going next with that strategy? Because I'm sure that you've learned a lot over the past, you started in 2021, so you're going on 4 years now.
Yeah.
What have you learned, and how have you pivoted from those learnings?
It's crazy how relevant this question is right now, because lately, the past couple months, I've been reflecting on curating, and I've learned a lot about the curational aspect, about myself as an artist, and really diving deep into what is next for me. I really enjoy the curating aspect. I've toyed around with the idea of getting my own space, curating my own gallery. But I also have learned that I don't know if that's economically a sound path for me.
In what regard?
In regards to supporting it financially, art is incredibly hard to sell. And there are people who make it look so easy, or it does come easy for them, and that's great. For me, I've had artists that have come through Brewery Park and sold $10,000 worth of art in a month. I have artists come through and sell absolutely nothing. And then, of course, in between. And what that has shown me is that it's very inconsistent. Another thing that I have learned is that grants are incredibly important. And I am terrible at grant writing. So it's not my forte. It's something I can learn in the future, but is it really what I want to do? I don't know. So lately I've been working on a lot of projects with like the Girl Scouts, and I just finished up with one that's utilizing food waste as paint pigments. So that has shown me that I like doing more community-based projects that not only expand my art form, but expand me as a person and try to do more for other people and for the earth. And that wasn't something I expected, but that's where I'm at. And I would like to see what's next with that.
And I think it's an interesting topic, because I think I see artists, contemporary artists, fine artists, the same way that I see any other creative, whether it's a songwriter, whether it's a beat, because like if you look back 10, 15 years, maybe 20 years ago, producers weren't as popular as they are today. Like David Guetta has its own show now. But before, it was these artists were making music for musical acts. They weren't the main person. And I think that now we're transitioning into a new space with contemporary artists and fine artists and abstractionists and muralists, where they're becoming the main act. And I think that a lot of artists, and it's an interesting dialogue, because I think that they don't teach that in the traditional educational format. They don't teach you how to become a brand.
Right.
Because once you become a brand, you look at, any artist, you can go down the street and there's so much representation of the artists from the past in Midtown. Diego, Frida, Norman Rockwell. Like there's so many artists that have stapled themselves into the art community here in Detroit, but it sucks that the I don't know if it's a word, the productization. I made it up. The product, like the fact that now there's so many products that have these artists' face and likeness and making a lot of money, like their estates, I'm assuming, are making a lot of this, revenue. Why isn't that more artists are able to do that while they're here? You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
to be able to go on tour as an artist, I think creating a different mindset of what it means to be an artist today, I think is so important for creatives to start dabbling into, because I think every industry that involves creativity is looking to find new and innovative ways to take the benchmark forward and say, I'm not just this, I'm also this.
Right.
Or I'm not just selling this, I'm also selling this. I've noticed that you are also doing workshops. Like I think as a creative, it's a constant need to find innovative ways of bringing revenue into the stream, so that way you're able to continually push the bar forward to experiment and find new ways to engage with your audience and get them to want to engage with your art.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's putting your art on a wearable piece, or finding a way to develop a relationship with another brand that maybe is a cartoonist, and they maybe somehow, you guys collaborate on something like that and you come up with plush dolls or something. I think there's so many different ways to build brand today. And I hope that more artists start to connect to their true gift and how to maximize it. Not just limit themselves on, I can only paint on a canvas, or I can only paint on a wall, or I can only do this to make money. No, you can literally start to sell. In media, there's a stand that you put lights on called a C-stand.
Mm-hmm.
As an artist, you can paint C-stands and sell custom C-stands. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can find new ways to reach new markets. There are no limits when it comes to creativity.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I agree with that, but I also want to piggyback on the mindset of the artist. Not all artists are business minded, or even know how to even use a computer sometimes. So that there's a lot of limitations. I have a friend who's an artist, so many great ideas in her mind, but when it comes to executing them, that's where there's like a roadblock for her. So I understand, but it also takes a special minded artist to be like, yeah, like everything that you just said, absolutely, that's amazing. And also, like, how do you put all that forward? How do you take the photos for that? Where's the money to get the people involved? There's a lot of components that come into something like that.
But can I say on that, I really want to emphasize the importance of also remembering that as creatives or as entrepreneurs, we really strive to do everything ourselves. And I think it's a form of trying to prove something to ourselves. But I try to practice this myself as much as possible, because I do find myself getting to a point when I'm like, I could probably get it done faster if I just did it myself. But I really think that we all have a unique gift, and we have to learn how to become better at delegating or assigning tasks to talent, so that way we're not tied down and limited on what we can execute.
Yeah.
Because I think that when you have such innovative and creative mind, and how you were just describing your friend that has all these ideas but may feel limited, like your ideas are the thing that people want to buy. Like, you don't have to be the one filming the video, you don't have to be the one taking the picture, you don't have to be the one building a website, like leverage relationships. I spoke with another artist recently that barters a lot of their services. They'll trade a piece of artwork in exchange for that talent to provide their services to them.
That's true.
So I think that we only are limited by what we allow our mind to think.
That's so true. And sometimes it's hard to remember that. I personally forget that all the time, You put those limitations on yourself that aren't really realistic or even true.
And there's 8 billion people in the world. I needed to hear this kind of number in my mind, because I think a lot, like I have conversations with a lot of creatives all the time, and a lot of creatives don't like being on camera. A lot of creatives don't like showing their face. And they're like, oh, I just don't want to be bothered. I just don't want to be stopped and stuff. I'm like, do you understand that if you had 20 million subscribers, that is only 0.002% of the population?
It's crazy to think. It's so small.
It's so small.
It's so much.
So small. And I think when you first are starting off, 10,000 people is a lot of people.
Yeah.
So that's even way less of the population. So you don't have to be for everyone. You just have to get comfortable with allowing yourself to make mistakes and learn in front of everyone.
Yeah.
So that way you're able to find your people, the people that connect to your message, the people that connect to your art, and that want to support you.
Yeah.
That's
true.
I think people are just afraid to look bad or look like they don't know enough. And the truth is, people forget faster than we remember.
That's true.
Like, you can put a video out and it could flop, and literally a week later, everybody would not even remember that you put that video out.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I did an interview, 4 years ago. It was the worst interview, and I stopped, and they're like, okay, you're done? It's like, yep, all right. First interview I ever did. I don't think it exists anymore. Thank goodness.
So as an artist, how do you navigate moments when your values are tested by like external pressures?
In those moments, I always try to remember who I am and where I want to go and see if that aligns. Because if it doesn't align, then you're not creating or moving in the way that is true to yourself. And when you're not doing that, it's not going to be wholehearted.
Mm-hmm.
And then like the art you create, the words you speak, the people who you hang out with aren't going to be correct, and you're going to kind of go down the wrong path. And then the wrong things are going to come to you, and it's not in alignment, basically. So there have been a few situations where like fake art has come up, or
what is that? Fake art?
Like AI art,
Got it.
someone claiming that. And like you have to just nix that. You can't, give credit or attention to that. That's not okay.
Yeah, like opinions on your art should never hinder or affect your process at all. Because I remember having a conversation with you about, there were some comments about your use of the vacuum.
Yeah.
And like the opinions that's not. Do you remember that conversation? How you were saying that somebody had commented something about that technique and had not so kind words to say?
I don't know if I remember that conversation specifically, but was it about like it was made from a robot, so it wasn't actual art?
Yeah. That's the point, is like if somebody's opinion about your approach, and I think that's what the fear that holds a lot of people back from creating is judgment. Like the way that you create is the way that you create.
Yeah.
Why? Like, live your life with the expectation that people are going to watch and have an opinion, and don't take it personal.
Yeah.
Don't take it personal, because the truth is they're not producing. They're not out there putting their process out for the world to judge. And I think that when you get so okay with not allowing judgment and opinions of others to or slow down your growth, you become unstoppable,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And I think that people start to really value you on a whole entire other level because subconsciously they wish that they could also not be so impacted by judgment.
Yeah. I always tell my kids, because they're budding artists themselves, that in every corner of every room, someone's going to have something to say about your art, your whatever, your shirt, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Who cares? You know, just move forward. Do what makes you happy. And with like the robot stuff, you know, whatever. It's fine.
I'm curious, what are your kids, because you said they're now 10 and
9 and 16.
9 and 16. What do you hear from them at this time? Because when we were 9 and 16, social media wasn't as prominent in our lives as it is now for young people. How are those conversations different from what you remember when you were that age?
So when I was 10, obviously we didn't have social media, but when I was 16, we had MySpace.
Mm-hmm.
And
What was it, top 5?
yeah. Yeah.
You were in my top 5 friends.
Oh, I'm so special. But yeah, there really wasn't a conversation around that for me. And I'm proud to say as a parent that my 16-year-old has zero interest in social media.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm very proud of him.
Yeah,
Like,
people are surprised because for anyone that knows me personally, I, growing up, never posted a single selfie,
mhm.
video, nothing about myself because I early on realized that I had a very unique way of seeing the world. And a part of me kind of felt not ready to allow myself to be so vulnerable to outside opinion about how I saw the world. So I absorbed and listened more than I shared.
Yeah.
And a few years ago when I started to produce my own, content with my face and started to share my opinion, I felt ready.
Yeah.
And I think that everybody's road to that point of feeling ready to share is their own journey. I don't think anybody, if somebody doesn't feel comfortable on camera or somebody doesn't feel comfortable sharing any part of their lives, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
You don't have to. I think you should only give what you're willing the world to see and share from you,
Yeah. That's true. That's why social media makes people's lives seem perfect. Because they're usually only sharing the good.
Mm-hmm.
Unless they're doing like a GoFundMe because their cat died or something. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I mean, it's always good to show the bad too because it shows that you're human.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's tricky.
And then tying into fear. So I remember we had a conversation months ago and we were talking about, social media and content and that conversation. And since that conversation, I noticed like you have tried so many different things online. You have been very active and allowing yourself to be accessible in a way that I was like, wow, that's super cool that you're opening up the door to your creative journey. What response have you seen since then? What has been the biggest change that you notice since you started to produce? Because it hasn't been that long. And the same for me. Like, I think most people forget that you have to be doing this for a good amount of time before more people start to take notice of what you're doing, because it's like starting a painting. You're putting the base, you're getting the colors, mixed together. You can't expect somebody to want to buy it when it's not done, or when it's not even like at a point of, oh, I see your vision, So like as we're creating and producing and we're putting stuff out there, we're at that early stage, So I always like to ask people like, what are you seeing now? And then what are you doing based on what you have seen? Like, how are you pivoting? What changes are you making?
I've noticed that people are paying more attention. They're intrigued by the robot vacuums. Like, I get people who come up to me and say, hey, I came out here
Really?
because I knew you were doing the robot vacuum thing. So
So
it's kind
do a lot of those videos on your social get a significant amount of views?
on Instagram, yeah. TikTok, it's really hit or miss. So yeah, it depends.
I'm curious, what type of content have you found to be the most effective for you as an artist?
Something when I'm showing them how to do something.
Oh, so like a
Teaching them.
how-to.
Yeah,
And what are people leaving in the comments? What are people saying?
I don't remember. I really don't. I wish I knew. I'm sorry.
No, I think it's the reason I asked is because I heard somebody once say that they learn more from the comments that people leave,
Yeah.
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 Because I'm like, and it does make sense because if you follow someone and there's someone that you admire and you go onto their social media and they have way more followers than you, there's a lot of people that I go to that have a significant amount of followers, and I will read the comments of their posts because I like to hear what people are thinking, what are people saying, because it's a form of market research.
Yeah.
Like the market is leaving their 2 cents on a piece of content or an idea or a thought that somebody published for the world to consume. I think that also too, comments is a form today in social media, a form of marketing for a brand, because I don't know if you remember this when Chick-fil-A had posted something and they had said something like, what is better than a chicken sandwich on a beautiful Tuesday morning? And then I think it was Wendy's. I could be wrong, but I think it was Wendy's. They went onto that post and said, if a delicious burger and frosty on a Sunday morning, because Chick-fil-A is closed on Sunday, so it's finding creative ways to inject your brand into other people's strategy, So I think that there are so many different ways to get into the conversation.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always have to be like what you put out. It could be your opinion or your 2 cents or your perspective on another creator's piece of content.
I've seen creators where they'll post like, oh, I'm mixing up a super top secret concoction of texture paste. And in the comments, all these people are trying to troubleshoot it. So
Really?
then I'll take that to the studio and play around with it, So yes, I have personally learned from the comments too. And I see how I can interject. And, cool.
What's something that you want to try that's on that list of like, I'm going to get to it?
There's something I already started playing with, and I played with it one time. I just finished that project, Waste to Wonder, where I used food scraps to create pigments for creating artwork.
What type of food scraps?
Bone, hibiscus powder, coffee powder, banana stem fibers, and like a couple of other things. And they're all sourced from local restaurants too, which is kind of cool.
I had a thought, and I want to ask you, and I wonder what your opinion is on this, because I feel like you would be somebody that I would feel comfortable asking, because you are such a innovative artist that you are willing to try so many different things. But you had just mentioned bones. Yeah. Has anyone ever came to you with the proposition of using like cremated remains in a piece of art? Because you know how like there are people that, like art designers, that will use, whether it's a family member or a furry family member, and they'll use their cremation in jewelry.
Yeah.
Has that conversation happened yet?
Not yet, but we'll see what happens.
Would you be willing to work on something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when I started that Waste to Wonder program and they gave me the bone, I felt so grounded and connected to the earth and thankful to the animals that I actually saged everything and thanked the earth and thanked the animals. And I would definitely do that for a person. I think that as a sensitive person, I'd probably even pull in a lot of emotions within that piece. I feel like that could just be like another level of abstract expressionism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that, honestly, I think that would be such a cool concept, because when you receive a family member's remains, you don't, it's such a foreign, like it's so far from what is normal to you. And you're like, what do I do with this? You know, I feel like sometimes people are like, I'm gonna go spread their ashes in a river, or, you know, over the Grand Canyon. And I think that for a lot of people, once they get to a place of remembering that we're all the same, and, you know, we're all the same source, that it starts to become more about what it represents to them, and how you can turn something that is so traumatic and painful into something that is so beautiful and that will live on forever. Because I think if, you know, somebody were to put their family members' remains into, and honestly, I don't even like that term, but I would say, like, to share,
Legacy.
yeah, their family members' legacy into a piece of artwork. I think that that piece of art can become a family pass down. I think that generation after generation after generation will start to pass this artwork down. And then now I'm even thinking out loud, it's like it could become like an entire like series collection of all the generations of family members. You know what I mean? Like, it's such an interesting concept. Art is, and that's the beautiful thing about art, is that there are no limits, there are no rules. I think it's really where you allow your mind to connect to, and just see where it goes.
I agree. I really like that. I know that, like, that's a little morbid to paint and work with someone's ashes in that way, but like, that touches me. Like, that would be an honor.
I think it's such an interesting conversation, because I remember when my dog had transitioned, and I never thought about, like, because they give you the option, do you want to have, you know, their remains with all the other dogs, or do you want to have their ashes separately? And obviously there's different costs that factor in your decision. But I think that for a lot of family members that have a fur baby, I think having a piece of artwork that represents their legacy is such a new way of thinking about what is possible with the afterlife for somebody's loved ones,
Yeah.
and what could it could become for them, you know? But yeah, I definitely think that I feel like the reason I wanted to bring that up with you, because I thought you are somebody that I've seen to be very open-minded with your approach to art, and the way that you utilize different textures and different mediums. So I wanted to get your 2 cents on that.
I jotted that down in my brain. I have a cat named Snowbert who passed away, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. And he's just hanging out in a container. You know, so I think through this conversation, I finally figured out
Wow.
what to do with him.
Wow, that's so
Yeah.
cool. And Snowbird?
Snowbert.
Snowbird.
He was a funny cat, so he had a funny name.
And it would be cool to see the piece kind of resembles some type of snow.
Yeah.
That would be cool. If you could relive any day in your life, what day would you relive?
That's a hard question because I wish I had an answer, but I feel like every day in your life has a purpose, even if it was like the worst day of your life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's growth behind all of that. And I have not lost a loved one, like a parent, yet. And I would like to say that would probably be one of those days I could probably relive. But
can I just say, I want to kind of not correct you, but just mention, like, I always correct people when they say, I'm sorry for your loss, because I don't think we ever lose our loved ones. I think it's a new connection to them. You know,
Right.
like we were connected to them before we came into this world. We're connected when we're here physically, and we remain connected in the after. You know, so I think that you only lose someone if you lose that connection. So I always, you know, through our experience, and I've shared, you know, our experience with our mother's transition, that it is very, it's an experience that you can never physically, mentally prepare for in life. But I think it is such an important one to feel as you're going through it, and remind yourself that you are one with them for eternity,
Yeah.
and that never changes, you know? But yeah, I just wanted to say that.
I agree with you 110%. When my grandma was here, we were pretty close, but yet we weren't. There were a lot of drugs and alcohol involved with our relationship on her side. And after she passed, like I was able to be the one to dress her for her funeral. And one thing that I gave her was a cross around her neck. And I bought one for myself as well. And we have that connection, and I feel her and I know her in a different state in the spiritual realm than in the physical realm. And I think that's incredibly beautiful. And we have conversations, and she shows me things, and she turns my lights on at home, and it's great, you know? So, yeah. But getting back to your question, I really don't have an answer because I see value in every phase of life.
I think that's a great answer. I think that every day is such a unique gift, and I think it's so important to be present as possible, because I think anxiety and fear is induced by the unknown.
Yeah.
And we don't I'm a firm believer that your thoughts are your life. Like you, 100%. If you want to live to be 100, communicate that.
Yeah.
Say it out loud. Have that conversation with the universe. You know, if you're a person of faith, you know, have your, you know, your strong connection and relationship with God. And we're designed to live past 100. Obviously, a lot of the things that we eat and the things that consume our mind play a big part. I really think that illness is heavily derived by things that are toxic, not just physically, but mentally.
Right.
You know? So I think that the more healthy your mind becomes and connected, it becomes to the world and to God and to the universe and to each other, because we are all one.
Right.
The more like just grand your life becomes, you know? I think it's such a cool thing that us as humans, we forget how powerful the gift of life is, and how powerful the gift of our human body and connection to our mind, body, spirit, and soul, and our mind is, you know? So yeah, I think that every moment should be cherished. And the only reason I asked that question, because I was like, is there a significant moment in your life that really changed things for the positive for you, that like made it where it was like, I'm not wasting another moment. I'm not complaining. I'm not like, you know, because for me, it was, you know, after our mother's transition, it really shifted my perspective on life and what was important and what was real and what was not. And it's not that I would want to relive that day, but I think that it's now I'm grateful. And I know that for some people, they might think like, oh, what do you mean you're grateful? I'm grateful for the opportunity and the blessing that I had, the time that I was blessed with my mother. And I'm grateful for the healing journey that God has taken me on to make me stronger and more connected to him, or to God, and then to the world, you know? So it's not so much reliving, but it's almost just like reminding myself of how grateful I am
and how strong you are
to be where I am today. You know, it's definitely a journey.
I remember when we first met and you were sitting on my orange couch in my studio and your mother was in the hospital, and you were asking me, like, do you believe in God and what are your thoughts about that? And I don't know where you were at with your spiritual beliefs or your religion at that time, but I feel like the growth that I've seen from there to now is like, it's astronomical. And I'm really proud of you.
That's so cool. I appreciate you saying that.
You're welcome.
I think it's so important for people to communicate that, to like their feelings about people. Because I think that that's one thing that I really am proactive about today. Sharing my gratitude for people.
Yeah.
And the impact that they have on my life. And it's nothing that I will ever not do.
Right.
You know?
I agree. Yeah. Since my cancer diagnosis, that is one of the things that has come out in me is telling people how you feel about them, because they're not going to know unless you say it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm getting teary-eyed just sitting here, you know, just showing all the people in your day-to-day life, like, hey, I love you. You are great. You matter. That they're going to take that, embody that, and it's going to change their lives, even if it's only for 5 minutes.
No, but you're right. I think that I heard somebody say, and I need to find out who the original person that quoted this is, that people will always remember how you made them feel. They may not always remember what you've said or, you know, what you were doing, or but they will remember how you made them feel. And I think that that's something that I approach every relationship, every conversation, every new project, every day of my life is like, I want people to feel good around me. I want people to feel, honestly, I want people to feel God when they're around me, because like, I feel like in a way, when you experience such a almost unhuman life experience, it pulls you closer to the non-physical. You know, like obviously I know that I'm a human and I'm in physical form, but if we were to turn off all the lights, if we were to create a filter where we all sounded the same, what would be the thing that separated us? Or would it be the thing that brought us closer together? You know, because we have more in common than we do different.
Yeah.
But I think that the mistake that we make as a human race is that we focus more on the differences than we do the commonalities.
Yeah.
You know?
And also another mistake is that we think that this is it. It's not. It's the school of life, you know?
100%.
It's the human experience.
And I think that that is the part that is the most freeing.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to be afraid. You are good.
Yeah.
You know? So what's next for Amanda Koss? What's coming up for you? What is a project that you're excited about? What's on the pipeline? What do you want to share?
So many. I was gifted the banners from the 2024 Grand Prix.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was something.
How did that happen?
I had sold a piece of art, a couple pieces, to someone who does the advertising for them, like back in 2020 COVID. And it was like, okay, 6 feet away, hand the art over between the car type of thing. Never really got to build a connection with her. And then she pops up in my inbox and she's like, hey, I've got these.
Inbox, like email inbox or like DM?
DM, yeah. She's like, hey, I've got these from work and we don't want them to go to the landfill. There's quite a few. And I've seen your progress throughout the years and think that you'd be a really good candidate for this. And so I said, yeah, because I believe in saying yes to everything unless it doesn't serve you. And that is exactly what I did. And I drove my husband's giant truck to downtown Detroit over by the river, and they lifted them up on a pallet with a high-low.
On a pallet?
Yeah.
So wait, how many banners?
I don't know how many. I didn't count them, but I can tell you I cried pulling them into my studio.
Oh my gosh.
That was so many.
So what do you plan on doing with them?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's what I'm figuring out this month. I just wrapped up a big project.
It's going to be so cool.
They were thinking a mural, and they were thinking of me creating like a small collection to show at the Grand Prix for 2025. And I was considering seeing if I could involve the Girl Scouts in this as well,
Mm.
trying to loop them back in because I've created a bond with quite a few of them.
Hmm.
Some of them are very intrigued into art, and this is very unique and can be very empowering for them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What about your future for curating?
I plan to keep curating. I am not sure if I'm going to expand on it any more than I did. I have 3 locations I curate for right now.
What's your reluctancy on expanding?
My reluctancy on that is that I've seen how people budget for art, and pulling the money is like pulling teeth with a wrench and no pain medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not fun for me. And I want to foster the connections that I've created that enjoy the art and appreciate what I do for them. And I feel like that's really what deserves my attention the most.
I want to ask you a question on that point with budgeting and with perspective of value when it comes to artwork. And I've noticed through your works and through other artists that are collaborating with corporate clients, it's often a common surprise when the budget allocated for a creative project is often undervalued for the expectation of what the artist is to execute. What advice would you give to corporate America listening to give them a stronger perspective or insight on why there should be more of an investment and push for embedded creativity and talent in their strategic approach when it comes to building community, when it comes to building awareness, when it comes to building and strengthening their own network?
You can use art as a way to show your values as a business. And I think that that's probably one of the best ways as a company, corporation, to show who they are. When you walk into a hospital, are their walls blank? What does their art? Is their art old? Is it outdated? Is it new? Do you recognize the names? Like, you're in the art community, so you might. And then how much did they spend on those? Usually hospitals have like the biggest budget for art. And that's because they have so much liquid assets or monetary assets they need to burn for the tax write-off. And that's totally fine. That's great because that's exactly what we're advocating for, right? But when it comes to companies that like they want art, but they don't want to give the money that it deserves or like the talent that it takes to acquire that art, it's very disheartening because there's so many things that come that's good out of that. Not only the tax write-off and the showcase of your values through the art, but it's uplifting the artist community around you. And that is so important.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you a question. If you were the decision maker, if you were the person in position in a corporate role, how would you approach it differently from the perspective of the corporate side, but then also the perspective of the artist side? Because I think in the same token, as an artist, there's a level of expectation from a client, or as a creative, there's a level of expectation from a client that what am I getting in exchange for the money, the tangible, the liquid money that I'm handed to you to offer me something in exchange? And I think that disconnect often is the reason why there's not really that and I don't want to say for everyone, because there could be a ton of current situations where there's corporate clients that are giving exactly what the artist is worth, but how does that become more of an open conversation and smooth dialogue between a corporate entity decision maker and an artist, so that way they both feel they're both getting exactly what they want out of that relationship or transaction?
Well, every corporation and every artist is different and every expectation is different. So I think that having a budget for a corporation set aside for art, even if it's only like, I don't know, $10, $15, $20,000 a year, and then doing what you can, the most that you can with that. As an artist, their expectations might be really small. I have some artists that are happy with the $50 stipend. Or there are corporations like Kresge where they rent the art from artists for 2 years at a time and then give them 10% of that valued artwork.
Mm.
And then at the end of that, they might purchase the artwork. So you might get more money at the end. So it really depends on what the dynamic is of both and if the artist is satisfied. Someone who's lower in their art career might be okay with the $50. Or they might say that's not okay. It depends on where you're at, where you're building your resume. And as far as creating that dialogue between the artist and the corporation, I feel like oftentimes they feel bad because they can't do that. It's not budgeted. It's not a normal budget allocation. So when they feel bad, they avoid that. And then the artist feels bad and they're like, well, maybe I'm not worth it. They internalize that. So as for an artist's point of view, don't be afraid of no. Keep planting that seed. And if you keep poking them and if enough artists come up and they poke them so many times, the corporation might just be like, well, maybe I need to allocate more. Maybe I need to do more.
You know where I think it starts?
Where?
Smaller clients.
Yeah.
Because there are smaller clients like local doctor's office, local dentist office, local developers that they don't have as many people involved in the decision. Like it's either they own the company and they make the decision. If you can convey to them the value in a way that makes sense to them, or find someone that's willing to try and see how it goes. Because you're right, there are different reasons why people are willing to spend money. It's the same in marketing. But how would you allocate that 10, 15, 20,000 that you had described for a corporate client? Like if you were in a position and they said, all right, Amanda, we have $20,000 to allocate to this, how would you approach that?
Okay, so in like a perfect world and Amanda world, and something that actually interests me would be to spend that money on the artist's work quarterly, as well as giving the artist a platform. So when their work is purchased, they could come in for a podcast session, an interview session. Like Crane would be a really good candidate for this. Hey, maybe you get their bio published, and then kind of like something along those lines. So that not only you're buying their work, but you're putting more back into that artist and like making that artist a stronger person. So that when the artist goes to the next place, they could be like, well, hey, I did this and you can look at all that, you know?
You're reinvesting back into your initial investment.
Yeah.
I think that when you buy a piece of artwork from somebody that is proactively developing their artistic career, when that art gets valued and maybe 10 years from now, it may be worth triple, you know? And I think that the same way that brands today utilize influencers to leverage their reach, like we mentioned earlier, a lot of artists have reach. So when you have them on your podcast, artists are trying to build awareness just as much as brands are.
Yeah.
So when you can leverage each other's platforms, and this is a big thing that I want to say, I really want people to get away from the idea of, I'm not going to feature this person because they have less followers than me. I think that is such a mistake to think that way.
Yeah.
I think it is a mistake to think that way because that same artist 5 months from now can have a viral piece and their following goes from 500 to 50,000.
Yeah.
And then your mindset on, I'm not going to share this because they have less than me. You're going to be kicking yourself in the butt because now they have more followers than you.
Right.
So I think it really, you have to take a piece of the humble pie and say, I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this for a bigger purpose. Like when we share other people's story, we can't do it with the expectation of what it's going to do for me. We have to do it because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
It's the right thing to do to talk about people that are great at what they do without the expectation that they're going to send me some sort of referral or they're going to share my posts. I get it. People don't Like people have their reasonings on why they want to have a perfectly curated like Instagram timeline, but it's like, don't let your pride mess up your growth.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know what is going to resonate, and you don't know who it's going to resonate with. A young kid that sees somebody's post and they're like, wow, this is so cool. I'm going to share it to my stories. And then that kid's mom or dad can be the a major art collector.
Yeah.
And they see that post because, of course, they're going to be watching their kids' posts. They're going to see them. Who is this? Who is this? I like that. Like, then they're going to go to you know what I'm saying? Like, you never know.
Yeah.
So don't feel like if you have people following you, if you're more worried about oversharing and the fear of them muting your stories and posts, you're losing already.
Yeah.
You're losing already because if you have 1,000 followers, or if you have 5,000 followers, or if you have 10,000 followers, and you're only worried about those 10,000 followers, and you're not where you want to be yet, you're focused on the wrong people.
Right.
You need to be focused on getting to 50,000 or to 30,000, and then at that 30,000, you end up having like 50% of your following, your repeat customers and clientele.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I think the way that we see social media today is unhealthy.
Yeah.
Is, I feel like, very focused on vanity, very focused on what is it going to do for me. It has to be the opposite. Like, what are you doing for the community? What are you doing for the industry? What are you doing for the people in your network? Because when you do for others, naturally people are going to want to return the favor. And I'm not saying do it again like with the expectation, but I'm saying do it with no expectation.
Yeah.
When you do it with no expectation, I'm not saying be blind to what's happening.
Yeah.
Like, you definitely have to take notes. You definitely have to pay attention to who is, who you keep, scratching their back and they don't scratch yours. Like, because your time is your most important, asset.
Mm-hmm.
So as you start to learn where your referrals are coming from, then of course you're going to start to do more with that partnerships with that person.
Yeah.
Somebody maybe never sends you referrals. All right, maybe you're not going to do as much, but you're learning.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a matter of allowing yourself to not get so caught up on the vanity metrics of social media, but pay more attention on what you're doing and how it is positively bringing value into other people's life. Because though you may not get 50 likes or 100 likes or 1,000 likes on a post, you may end up selling a $5,000 piece on that single post that got 5 likes.
Right.
You never know. So I think it's just challenge yourself to think differently as you evolve in your career.
Yeah.
And allow yourself that grace to learn through your mistakes,
Absolutely. I wish everyone thought that way, felt that way,
I do too.
Yeah.
So Amanda, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you being here. You're such an incredible friend, artist, talent, and I'm excited to watch your journey. I'm excited to see what you do with Snowbird. I'm excited to see what you do with Snowbird because I can't wait to see what you come up with that, because I feel like your vision is so dynamic and rich and bold, and I see you inspiring so many people and having such a positive impact on this world. So thank you.